I was involved in a study that by elimination of meat in 3 weeks, men's testosterone went up by how much? 30% by eating plants.
Meet Darin Olien, co-host with Zac Efron, wellness expert, vegan advocate, and more.
The hardest thing in the world and the easiest thing in the world at the same time is focusing on yourself, improving yourself, being kind. And if you can't be kind, that's your shit that you're unwilling to look at. So if you can cultivate your life, it is not without a huge amount of responsibility and power, but you can always do something to improve.
Darren, how old are you, if you don't mind my asking?
53.
You have more muscle mass than like many 30-year-olds out there. What's the secret here? Back to this week's CATAMANIA episode and remind you to please, or ask you to please, like, comment, share this episode with a friend if you like it. You know, your support means more than you know. I have with me here today Mr. Darin Olien, who I thought had a Romanian name, but according to him, he doesn't have any Romanian roots.
Just again, Viking steel stuff. So probably just stole the name.
I don't think you guys made it that far south.
Maybe not, but there's always a rogue Viking, someone doing something.
Isn't it crazy? It's been happening. Like, I don't know. I think the biggest thing for me was, I thought, learning history, I thought that we have evolved and we're now smarter, and I don't think we are. Like, I think we're just gonna,
I think we evolved with conveniences to make our lives ridiculously convenient,
especially in this part of the world.
In this part of the world, I go to a grocery store. I'm not foraging for my food. But then the irony is you're getting poisonous food, right? So it's full of unwanted and virtually unnecessary concoctions of processed food. So on the one hand, we can go get it. On the other hand, we're slowly poisoning ourselves.
We have to decipher between what is what and what we can eat. Many of my listeners, and if you're watching this in person, you probably would have recognized Darren from a wonderful docuseries called Down to Earth. According to the show, show's description, you were described as a superfoods expert. Is that your main focus in life?
I mean, it was a focus for a while. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it ever leaves me. And it really was like that title, Superfood Hunter, and all of that stuff came by way of just a reporter that was following me around, and he came up with it, and it kind of
you were given a title
stuck. But it was a period in my life where I came to this point where I was, had enough knowledge to look in the back of labels of supplements and foods, and I was wondering why they were marketing all these wonderful health benefits, and then the formula didn't match it. And there was this light bulb moment where I was like, because I was getting pretty good at putting formulas together and looking at the research, and then I was just frustrated. Literally, I remember like it was yesterday. I was on my knees in an aisle looking at a bottle of some supplement. Next thing I know, instead of being upset, the perspective shifted and said, "Well, you're already doing it, so why don't you just fully do it?" And so the small town kid in me that grew up in Minnesota, that, classmates and everything and cousins were all farmers, I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to understand what these formulas are, if I'm going to understand what these botanicals are, I have to just go to where they are. And it was a very innocent and very naive kind of idea. And that idea led me to in the middle of the Amazon and in the Andes, and meeting and making connections to people that were processing them and working with them, and then eventually in the eating breakfast and lunch with the indigenous people who were growing this for centuries, you know. So that kind of opened up into like, well, you know, this is really, it turned into a, you know, an ethnobotanical, anthropological exploration that I was just getting massively educated on. And I figured the best way to do that is just keep putting myself into situations that can show me what was really going on, and that I could improve it, and that I could actually change what that quintessential bottle that I was looking at that wasn't equating into great botanicals in there, but were pushing this narrative that this curcumin or this moringa or this maca or this ashwagandha was supposed to do X, Y, and Z. But if it is a bad neutered product coming from some far off land that wasn't tested, and then certainly not taking into the account the indigenous people that were growing it, no one knew anything at that time. This was, I don't know, 2001, 2, 3. You know,
that was like before these things were fashionable, so to speak, right?
So this was not, for me, it was just the small town kind of idea was like, this is the morally right thing to do, but not thinking that I was planning on having a title of any kind. It was just, if I'm going to formulate with these things, I'm going to know where they're coming from. I'm going to know how they're watering it, how they're harvesting it, when are they harvesting it, are their wages fair, and then more importantly, how are they processing it in a way that can make it into a capsule, a bottle, a pill, so that constituent, that the curcumin and the turmeric, the 35 antioxidants that live in moringa, the immune boosting compounds of chuchuasi in the Amazon, like whatever it is, if I'm going to use them, I want to use them so they help people.
Right.
I don't want to use them to sell them.
Yeah.
I want to sell the benefits, truly. So that's the long kind of innocent part of it. And then I spent a greater part of 15 years doing that.
You know what I was thinking? So you're obviously really big on sort of, I want to word it properly, climate change, right?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you mean, because the political charge around climate change is, there's levers that I don't agree with of what people are using that term, or I don't agree with. So here's what I would say. I'm big on stopping doing things that are hurting the planet and us. And I see this climate change argument as pollution. It's polluting. It's very grounded. My view is very grounded in the sense that I'm not necessarily going to say, go do all this stuff so we draw down CO2. And what's the layperson supposed to do with that kind of information? They can't do much with it. However, if I explain it to my brother or my family at home and say, listen, does it make sense for you to grow? You have some lawn here. You have some acreage. Does it make sense to you to grow your own food? Yeah. Because that other food is sprayed, the agricultural industrial complex is sprayed with huge amounts of chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, larvicides. And the soil is destroyed. So the nutrient value is less and less and less. The chemical value is more and more and more. So if I go back to my family in Minnesota and I talk to them, I say, that food in your store largely has a lot more chemicals in it, but you can grow your own. You can grow a lot of your food here. And by the way, one of the side benefits of that is it's better for you, it's better for the environment, it's better for the soil. That's the way I like to look at it. Plus, the chemicalized expression that we've had in this world is one that is polluting us and it's polluting the environment. So, when people say we are not having an effect on the environment, which is absolutely insane, it just depends on what you mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
I can say, and I've interviewed these people, I can say I've talked to the PhD engineers who tested the blood of nearly all populations on the planet and found that a forever chemical called PFAS is in the blood of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew that in the 90s. So if you go back to the climate change thing, we are affecting all people in a negative way, just by one viewpoint. And that is that PFAS chemical, which is a forever chemical, which is carcinogenic, which increases the rate of diabetes, which increases cholesterol that bioaccumulates in the body and in the environment and the mammals and the birds and the sea, and we don't know how to get rid of it. That's one company that's been developing that chemical since the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, when we realized it was in everybody, still in society, 2000s, 2010, 2000, and now we're starting to ban it. Mm-hmm. But it's still here.
Right.
So I go back to all of that. I don't know all of the science, and I don't pretend to. So I go down to, we got to clean shit up. We got to clean up our food. We got to clean up our air. If we do that, if we stop polluting nature and our beautiful planet is really resilient. Mm-hmm. And it will protect us.
Really smart too.
Really smart. And we've divorced nature in our systems of agriculture, even though flippantly we want to put everything in categories. We want to say all companies are bad, all corporations are evil. That's not true at all. Mm-hmm. There's great people in those companies, mm-hmm. right? There's great people. The example of Chris Hansen, who was a researcher at 3M, who they developed PFAS. I talked to her. She was trying to do the right thing within a system that wasn't and think of it, she was a woman. She was being gaslit. It was personal, even though the science was there. So that's one example of infinite amounts of systems that we have created that are destructive. Mm-hmm. So I go back to the roots of where, pun intended, where I'm from, and I go, I think the climate change conversation is a really bad conversation. The way they're having the conversation is a bad way of having it. Because it means nothing to people like me, or at least where I'm from, right? So my mission is to clean shit up, because if it's hurting you as an environment, because we are, it's also hurting the macro environment, mm-hmm. and vice versa. So if we kind of create new systems to clean ourselves and clean the world and push back at some of this, this world we didn't create. It was being created before we were even born. We're in a chemical soup. We're in a destructive pattern of pollution that clearly we need to clean up. Mm-hmm. So that's my long-winded.
I appreciate it though. Yeah. You know why? Because I got a sense from you that your view is very reasonable. And I thought to myself, these are the people who we should be listening to instead of our governments, you know? Because I think that the governments are using it as a weapon.
Yeah.
Right? Weapon of control, weapon of all sorts of things. And you're right, it's so politicized. And I've come to a conclusion that I'm not going to listen to anything that comes out of, the authorities' mouth at this point, because so many things have been a lie. And so the way they talk about it is just like, we need to stop flying airplanes. We need to stop driving cars. Meanwhile, they themselves are usually, using private jets to go to meetings and stuff like that. So I'm like, something is not adding up. And something that my husband and I always talk about if you want to help the environment, and this is like such a controversial thing to say in like some of our friends circle, even try to get very financially independent, like try to become wealthier, because then you will be able to afford better things and you will be able to contribute to better things in life, right? Your car will probably have a lot less harm on the environment than the one that, you know, just the conversation around what your focus should be. And instead of, you know, screaming and complaining that, oh my God, we're all going to die, the oceans are going to boil, you're actually having a reasonable conversation around where it's all starting. The food, you know, you mentioned us, cleaning us up, cleaning ourselves, you know. So I really appreciate that perspective. It's very reasonable.
Yeah, and that's where it loses reason in the average person, because we always have the numbers. The people always have the numbers from these people that seem to talk down to everybody or think that they are the power over. We have billions of us, and I think people are realists, and they want the same thing, right? So that's where, even in doing Down to Earth season 1 and 2, it became, and now developing more shows. That's where the pun intended, or just lack of a better phrase, rubber meets the road. And I'm also, to your point, we can get so projected onto the world. Like, it is one of the human challenges to try to change the world so that I feel better. It's the same argument as if I am a warm droplet of water and I try to warm the ocean, right?
The ocean here is really cold, by the way.
Right. It's
It's
not
way
going to
too
work, right? So even if I'm at 1,000 degrees and I'm a drop of water, I'm not 1,000 degrees in a very short amount of time, because that's a big. So I go back to, and I love what you said, and I'll elaborate on it. The hardest thing in the world and the easiest thing in the world at the same time is focusing on yourself, improving yourself, being kind. And if you can't be kind, that's your shit that you're unwilling to look at, right? So if you can cultivate your life, it is not without a huge amount of responsibility and power. Because we know if someone comes into this room right now and they're full of positivity and strength and focus and purpose, we feel it instantly. We don't need to talk about it. And also the opposite is true. If someone comes in, doesn't know me, doesn't know you, and just vomiting their ideas and thoughts and points of view and angry, and what does that do? That's them. So focusing on ourselves, and also, listen, not everyone is perceived in the same position, right? But you can always do something to improve. You can always improve your mind. You can always improve your field. You can always create coherence in your head and your heart, right? And you align those things. You can always improve your financial situation, regardless of where you're at. Work hard. Go find a way. Be resourceful. Find your tribe, right? These things are so powerful, and I agree. Like, we project, and yes, there's groups run rampant in some of these circles, and I kind of came to the position a long time ago. I'm not interested in changing anybody. I have no energy in that game. I want to do what I feel I can do, and regardless of who becomes the president, regardless of any government, none of my dreams, none of my goals change. And through COVID and all of the craziness that was going on, I realized, like, if I am getting sucked up in just trying to stay on top of all this stuff, my light is going down. And the truth is, I know what I'm here to do. Does it evolve? Does it constantly inform? Yeah, but regardless of the up and down and the yo-yo of the world and people trying to control and have power and gain power over people and manipulate people, like I want water, power, food, shelter, inspiration, purpose, health, wealth. I want that for the world.
Yeah.
And I'm working my ass off this last 2 years just building stuff. I am talking about it. I haven't been, but I'm building it and behind the scenes. And yes, there's some new TV shows coming out. Yes, we have governments behind us. Yes, there's some clean technologies that if I actually told people they wouldn't believe me.
Mm-hmm.
If I told people we have clean energy that we can use today, that does not pollute, that is infinite, that we are working with teams of people I know, will change the landscape of our energy needs. That's true. And I'm going to leave it there, but I know that because I see it and I work with them and I understand that. And so my groups of solutions are expanding because I'm committed to the solution. And I'm committed for me to continue to learn.
Mm-hmm.
In that, the magnetic field that happens, I get inspired every freaking day by the amazing people that keep sharing more and more of their possibilities with me.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes back to what we can do as a sovereign individual. There's so much strength that can happen. And when you figure out the attunement and the coherence that you're truly dedicated, and we're all human, we have some crazy shit happen, right? And you have to brush that off and you go, I get back on my horse and I keep going and get back in my field of strength, and I get back in my tribe of people. And every day I practice, every day.
It sounds like you're taking a lot of personal responsibility, which is why aren't more people taking it? Why is it so much easier for some people to just...
It's a fatal convenience, if I were to say. Fatal convenience. It's the easiest fatal convenience. And what I mean by that, easy to get angry, easy to point fingers. Mm-hmm. It is one of the biggest challenges and the easiest things to do, and people don't do it. Because they have to look at yourself. It's that person in the mirror. You have to wrestle, that person who has their agenda and is so angry at everyone else that you have to agree with me and you have to change for me, and then I will be happy. The anger and the resentment and the fear, because underneath all that, it's just fear.
Right. There was a video I saw once. It was hilarious. There was like a climate change protest somewhere in Europe, and they were like chanting, "Just stop oil." And this guy ran up to them and he was like, "What is your piece of clothing made out of?" I was like, "Polyester." Like, you do realize that if you stop it, you're not have anything to wear. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, what are you doing yourself instead? Aside from screaming right now in a whatever square in your city,
But let's unpack that a little bit, because there's a lot that goes on even within that interaction. They're not even aware of what they're wearing and the industry that created it, because that was built before they were even born. So they're not even aware of the petroleum and the chemicals. On average, a t-shirt takes 8,000 chemicals that are dangerous for people and the planet. Mm-hmm. So with all of that going on, they're not aware of that. And so there's this hypocrisy. However, the path forward is not linear. We have to work together. If you had a switch to turn off oil, I wouldn't turn it off.
I wouldn't either.
Because it would
I'm very much against it.
It would collapse all of society. Mm-hmm. But if you go with them and go, hey, here we've got some alternative stuff. Great. Do you want to participate in that?
And by the way, you know what you're doing because you've had experience in generating this energy. So why don't we,
Exactly.
why don't we figure out how to involve you so that we make,
Let's collaborate.
Yeah.
Right? You have systems in place.
Yeah.
Power companies, right? Power companies lighting up California. One burned my house down. They had a derelict power pole that started the fire that at the end of season 1 people saw my house burn down, right? So that's what started that
it.
wasn't a wildfire. That was a power company that didn't take care of something that was identified as broken. And so when the Santa Ana winds hit it, it fell and sparked 96,000 acre fire, right? That's under no dispute. That is what happened.
Wow.
So, but I use that, I digress a little bit, but I use that as it's got an infrastructure. So what if I had this table represented a power unit that supplied all the power that I would need for my home? And I had that at my home. And I no longer needed the power to be sent miles and miles and miles over hot wires, over trees and blah, blah, blah. What if I used that, but I used the infrastructure and created a microgrid? So if a wildfire happened, I have power, I have water, because now I have the power shut off. No one could use even water because of so there's a lot going on within infrastructure, and it's not a flippant kind of this is wrong and that's right. It's like so much of the path forward actually is imperfect. It's imperfect. Like that very same protester got her clothes probably at Walmart, Target, like the values that they deem as horrible. They probably have an iPhone.
Oh yeah.
The hypocrisy.
Yeah. They probably drive a car that's like, just the worst emissions and stuff like that. Right.
So people lose perspective because when you're in fear, what happens? Your view gets narrow. If a bear comes in there, our focus will be to not die.
Yeah.
So that's an example of fear. We're not dreaming. We're not in an expansive view when a bear comes in that. But if people are in suffering, if they have mental health issues, if they've been abused, if they have just stuff that they haven't dealt with, and then society puts more and more of that information of fear out through news and through mainstream media, what happens? I do not want to, nor can I even see a view outside of what I've focused on. Therefore, I now am so far away of my issues that I've focused on the couple of these points that I am hell-bent on my survival now, that those things have to change. So there's such it is so messed up how all of these converging things have created a lot of a lot of these things come down to mental health, really.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And you said fear, and I heard that people in fear are the easiest to manipulate. So whenever you're in fear, if somebody tells you something, it's a whole other way you receive whatever the sentence is that was told to you, right?
Sure. And then you repeat it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, one of the hardest things in the world, and I have compassion for people. Like you and I, we're not out of fear. We will have fear again. We will have trauma again. Those are curveballs in life. The resilience that we cultivate is then creating our ability to respond at better and better rates, right? So the more I I empty my cup of pain, trauma, that is my responsibility now. Okay, it happened. Forgive them, forgive yourself. That's good for you. It's not letting people off. They already did the bad thing potentially to you. But you need to release them so that you can start the healing process. So there's so much that we're missing and we're projecting. Like I was just laughing about this the other day. Like it's sad and laughable. Like, we're just running around, everyone here, and we're just projecting constantly. All of our life is just projecting. You want your partner to say and do the right thing, and you don't communicate it, so they have no idea, so they're guessing. And of course they're going to do it wrong because you're projecting it. They don't know, right? They can't read.
What do you mean they're not going to read my mind?
No.
My husband, that's what happens. He just can't read my mind.
Not yet, anyway. Maybe he's in training, but I'm sure he's working hard at it. But
I'm working on my stone face so that I can express more, and he's working on reading my mind.
Exactly. It's a hell of a combo. But yeah, I mean, it's this, for a long time, I've been fascinated in consciousness and kind of awareness, and through pain in my own life, it, for whatever reason, started pulling me in. And so looking at the metaphysics of life and the understanding of my relationship to it and in my identity, because, this gets all out there a bit, but, the more we identify, then the more I'm protecting that which I think is me, right? If I think my existence is Darren and that's it, that's a different vantage point than, no, this is just Darren having a human experience, and the soul is beyond this apparently stolen name from Romania.
A Viking with a Romanian name. That's something new. Maybe Romanians stole it from you guys.
It could be.
I have to look into it. I have to look at the origin of your name. Now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
So what is that? Can you expand on that a little bit? So I'm Cristina Cataman, but is that just me? Like who am I? What
that's
am
your
I?
That's your biology that you get to. It's the soul, forming and coming into this interaction for us to have what? Experience. Maybe it's to work out stuff. Maybe it's to work out karma. Maybe it's to literally have joy, happiness. Maybe it's to contribute. Whatever it is. For me, I've had many experiences that showed me, told me, revealed to me that this is not it, right? And at the same time, I'm stoked that Darren gets to, be here. I'm staring at the Malibu Pier. I'm looking at the freaking ocean.
Fantastic. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
It's. Look at us. This is. We're this whole thing. We're like filming this thing. We're talking. We're just two people batting around ideas, and ultimately we don't have a freaking clue. And at the same time, we have all clue. Like it's kind of all exists, because at the end of the day, I try to do my best to get in touch with the unknowable.
Yeah.
Right? The mystery.
For sure.
Like,
it's quite a humbling idea. Like for me, once I realized that literally nobody knows what's going on and what they're doing, like your manager at work who you think is like, has it all figured out. They don't. Nobody knows what they're doing.
No parent does.
No parent does too. That was the scariest thing for a while when I was like, wow, my parents literally had no idea what they were doing either, Yeah. But it's kind of scary, but it's also really humbling at the same time, because all of a sudden you're like, wait, no person is better than me or worse than me. We're just doing our best,
And I think David Goggins said something like this, going, if you think they don't have the same shit going on, then you have lost the whole thought of it. Because I know people that consult with like the top CEOs of the top companies, and literally they've confessed, and I don't know their names, and I don't know what companies, so I'm just saying, he's not like he's breaking but they do say, like, when they do come to me, they also are winging it.
Yeah, literally.
right?
Yeah.
And there is obviously people have talents,
Of course.
they have skills, they you know, I think the thing, if I were to go back, I've been paving a road between the unknowable soul, God, whatever you want to call it. I've been paving that road for a while. I've been trying my best to get in tune with it every day, without fail, and listen. And I've listened. And the difference is I've been willing to take some actions that I didn't know what was going to happen. And
Doing what scares you?
100%. Every move, like I told you before, I don't know if we were airing yet, but when I left Minnesota, like the day after graduation, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I'm going to jump on my motorcycle and go to Boulder, Colorado.
Was it something that you just felt you had the need to do? Yeah.
I felt it. And then 3 months later, I still didn't have a job. I drove back, got all my stuff, threw my cat and everything into a U-Haul and drove out. And then I just stayed there. And then the same thing happened. Everything. Yeah. Every major thing that I did, I was flinging myself in the middle of it, and I'll figure it out. Every move, every career thing, every down-to-earth idea, I was just flinging stuff out. Yeah. I had a feeling, going back to life experiences, there's things that I was seeing, and then they'd come into an attention, and that attention had a feeling and an awareness, and so I would just like bink, and then when that made that shift of at least I knew enough to then go, I'll make that choice. But that didn't mean I know what's going to happen. I just knew enough to make that choice, and I got pretty good at it.
Sounds like you got really good getting out of the comfort zone repeatedly.
Yeah. And the comfort became, and it does become, and it's still uncomfortable to make those choices, but the comfort becomes the trust of yourself. And the trust, because I always like gave myself, I can always go back. My mom, my brother, my family, they're back here. Like my new family, friends and stuff in Colorado, I can go back to them. I can go there anytime. Now I have friends here. Yeah, there's always, I guess I always thought there was a safety net. I just never used it. So even though I made it up too, because like, you know, I just wanted to go with something that I felt there was no other voice. And this was also the other important thing. There's no other voice between that feeling and myself.
What do you mean by that?
There's no you should, mom, dad, person, professor, like there's no other person saying anything in that space. And I think that's a massively important one. Because we're going back to projection. We're like, our parents are projecting on us, our friends, circles, and everything else, and whatever we believe, all of that stuff is projecting back onto us. And then it's like, okay, who are we now? Yeah. And can we clear enough smoke to then listen? Yeah. Well, who am I? And what do I believe? And what am I? You know, I'm creating a couple more massive things right now that are ridiculous. It's so insane for me to even think of it and to do it. It scares the living shit out of me, and I'm doing it again. Because I feel, at the end of the day, I feel something.
One of the worst things I always say to myself and to people, if you have like a business idea or you have the idea that seems even crazy to you, but you feel like you should do, don't under any circumstances share it with your family or friends who will doubt you, right? Because like I remember when I wanted to start a podcast, I said it to one of my former coworkers. I was still working in the corporate. And she was like, oh, that, like, don't do it. There's so many podcasts out there. And I was like, thanks. I'm going to do it anyway, you know, but and same thing. She was just projecting. Like she probably wanted to start something as well, but something was holding her back. Something exactly.
Just fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's constant. It's constant.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think there's value in sharing it with people that can hold the space too, but that's also rare. There's also rare.
There's always the one friend at least. I mean, I'm blessed to have amazing people around me, but I've had a friend since a really long time ago who gets more excited about stuff that happens in my life than I do. And then she's like, why aren't you more excited? And I'm like, I didn't know I should be this excited, but now you're making me excited. And this whole, but she genuinely gets more excited about stuff than I do. And it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you kind of gain some momentum, then it has it's the other side of validation.
Yeah.
You go like, okay, like a few of these projects, which I know I'm being vague because it's not worth getting into it right now, but when you're on to something and then you can see people going, so it's the other side of it. It's not a projection. It's like you're on to an energy of creating something and then others are seeing it that you respect. And you're like, oh yeah. So then it creates more fuel. It's more of that snowball rolling down. It's gaining, gravity's pulling on it. It's picking up more snow. It's like, and it's rolling. So there's also that go, okay. And that's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes you're slamming yourself into a wall and no one gets you. And I've also had moments like that. And I've also had moments like I feel something, but I've also projected onto somebody that I thought they were supposed to do something. And I ended up losing ungodly amounts of money. So I projected on top of them in a project or a sustainable thing and blah, blah, blah. And so it all comes back to we got to be honest, radically honest with ourselves. Why am I doing anything? What's my motivation? And just be straight up about it.
How much do you believe in law of attraction? And what if you want to do something, but you have literally no money to do it? And the reason why I'm asking those hand in hand is because one kind of ties into the other a little bit. Because, you let's say somebody wants to start a project and they're like, okay, well, I have no money to do it. So what do I do?
Well, I would say good. I'm glad you don't. I'm saying good. Thank
you so much for tuning into this episode, The Greatest Financial Advice. This is arguably even better than my favorite financial advice, which is if something doesn't fit within your budget, just increase the budget.
Right. If you don't have, this is what I'll say. If you don't have money to do it, good. And I mean that because what is your motivation to do it? Why are you doing it? Inevitably, it's going to be hard to create anything. And I don't mean it meaning it has to be hard. I'm just, when you birthing something in the world, there's challenges. And if you're not clear as to why you're doing something, then your why is going to get yanked around. It's going to go bye-bye and you won't have the strength to do it. So use the time that you don't have money. Many times I've done it. I'll give you an example. I was I'll back into your answer here. It was when I moved to LA. I didn't want to do physiology stuff or nutrition stuff. So I was I left Boulder. I left all that behind.
And that was your background. You were doing
physiology, nutrition, kinesiology, just working with people, and then nutrition stuff I started to do. And so when I moved to LA, I got a master's in psychology, and I didn't know what I was going to do again, but I wanted to do something different. And I was running out of money, and I wasn't looking for people to help or clients because I decided. But I was running out of money. So I woke up going, I literally might have to move. I might have to go back to Colorado. I might have to go back to Minnesota. I'm running out of money. So I got pissed at, absolutely, utterly pissed at our creator, God, universe. And I screamed. It was 6 a.m. And I was like, hey man, you haven't made your point clear enough for me to get it. So it's on you. You got until noon to make it really clear why the fuck I am here. And I slammed the door and I went for a run. Yeah, that's how I had the conversation with God.
You for sure have Eastern European roots. Like if we did a DNA test, for sure, I guarantee you.
So
you're too Eastern European for a Norwegian.
People don't see that side of me. They see the which I also have many parts to myself, right? People see the down to earth part. That's actually when I'm on purpose like that, my playfulness comes out.
Yeah.
But also I have I'm clear, I'm on purpose. I want to change what I can in the world and stuff. And if you get in my way, I might knock you out. Like, so there's,
I guess maybe that is the Viking side of you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I know you're really pushing me to be Eastern European. so I don't know. You might convince all of my DNA by the end of this thing, but who knows? So I went for a run, and I went on that run, and I literally I had it. I let God know. So I was.
And you let it go.
I let it go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like a good argument.
Yeah.
I said what I needed to say.
Yeah.
And then I got done with the run, and I literally got stopped in my tracks with a non-psychedelic but purely downloaded thing on that trail outside. And I was just sitting there with, I don't know how much time went by, but just gobs of information was coming through. Yeah. So my point is, I had nothing but a feeling and some sort of knowledge that I hadn't quite figured out. I spent the next a year and a half writing from that feeling, just going to coffee shops in LA, just trying to recapitulate, trying to go, well, what is that?
Was it direct messages? Like, could you almost
yes
hear?
And no.
Yeah.
I couldn't. It was like a spiritual, soulful clarity without a practical manual, right? So I was writing, and I'd write and write and write, and I got really good at attracting shit during this process. I'd be like, am I gonna act? Because I saw part of a camera, right? I saw the camera thing, so I thought I was a little distracted for a second, think I was supposed to act. So I got an agent, and I took a few classes, and I found just immense fun and impromptu, kind of like just letting my goofiness come out and having fun. But then I was clearly like, I don't want to be in someone's project. Like, that didn't line up to me. And so I kept writing. So then I actually created some documentary stuff around finding some spiritual teachers in India and blah, blah, blah. The point is, I had no idea. I raised money sending out my intention of this documentary and finding spiritual teachers and trying to ground information to like the early days of like before The Secret. I was like trying to extract usable knowledge from people that were not even in the mainstream world. So I was flinging myself in the middle of India and all kinds of places in Bhutan and film. In order to get there, I needed to raise some money. So I just created a letter and sent it to everybody I knew and got the crap beat out of me from people that didn't understand, right? I didn't modify the letter to fit. I just sent it to everybody. And my whole family were against me. Every one of them thought I was like, this was the devil stuff. My point is that here's my biggest point to people that maybe don't know, you can't make money the reason to not do. You can't make money the reason not to be the energy. I was swimming in the energy of my beingness. I was given something because I commanded it. In some way, I demanded a change. And it opened me up to feel something that I was unwilling to feel. And in that feeling, I started writing from that feeling. So the aperture of my feeling or my knowledge was opening the more and more I started to journal every morning. And in that process, that collaboration would start to bring things to me that were aligned. And I would sometimes see it right before it was going to happen. And I mean, that's the secret sauce underneath almost everything. Like,
Just slam the door and go for a run. That's what I'm
Totally.
gathering.
Totally.
But it sounds like you got very clear of like, okay, I need an answer and I'm open to it because there's no other way. I have to receive it.
I have to.
Yeah.
You got to work with me here. Because I still do that to this day, maybe not as violently, but I'll just be, in frustration of life sometimes when things aren't working, and I'll be like, you got to throw me a bone here. I'm whatever I'm slamming up against. We got to change this shit right now, and I'm not getting it, and that's where the responsibility continues. Like, you got to help me out. So I'm a big fan of spirit, guides, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That energetic field that is enveloping us, all your ancestors, all of mine, they won't do anything unless you collaborate with them.
Right.
And 21 years ago, I did ayahuasca, and I saw a bunch of stuff. I haven't since either, by the way.
You did it once?
I did it a few times then.
Okay.
And that's a whole nother 2 hours.
A whole other podcast,
A whole other podcast. But the point is, it revealed to me a lot of things that I was already feeling and sensing, and it supported me in that knowledge and knowing. And again, the superpower that is there for all of us is our willingness to listen to that, and also you have to combat why me, right? Because
get out of the victimhood mentality.
Yeah, it's like it's so easy to do. Like, I just got invited to speak in front of my high school reunion in like a little over a week, and it's such a weird thing, like the way they describe you, and I would have never have thought I would have been that guy at any point. Every point along the way, and who am I to have a docuseries with Zac? Right? And who am I not? Because the thing that I would put in front of myself needing the accolades or the ego stroke is like, because I have a bigger reason of doing things. It was never about a show. I was never seeking to do a show with Zac Efron. I was never seeking to be a superfood hunter. I was going off of a feeling of something that was a lot bigger.
Right. The intent behind it was
it's still there. Yeah. Like, my intent is still, like, I'm not even close to being done because it's beyond all of that stuff. It's the energy is like, when I hear people like, now what do I do? Like if your goal is limited to this world, you're going to have some pain. And if it's limited here, I think you're probably going to run into the challenges that will be hard to overcome, because you're setting a goal strictly, nothing wrong. Like, I want people to have wicked abundance. To your point, going back to that, like, let's have wealth so we can create the communities and the sovereignty that we truly, I know what I'm doing with the billions of dollars. I've got it sorted, right? So that's a part of it, but it's not the money. I know what I'm doing with it. Like I know the service that I'm, every goal of mine has got an ether that's connected beyond, or else I literally, my DNA doesn't have the constitution to I just need $1 billion.
Right.
The goal is $1 billion. It's just not enough for me.
Right.
The service that I absolutely can implement with the $1 billion, now I'm motivated.
I had a friend of mine on my podcast. He's a really great coach, Joe Brown. And he gave me an interesting perspective on the whole idea of affirmations even. So he says, instead of just saying, you know, I am in the possession of, you know, $1 million. Why are you in the possession of the $1 million? So he says, expand on that and say, I am in the possession of $1 million because I have helped this many people with this kind of problem.
Bingo.
Boom.
Bingo.
Then it's bigger than you. And then you have a reason. And the intent behind you wanting $1 million is because so many people want all these things, but they don't know why. Well, it'll give me this, it'll give me that. But it's like, well, but also what are you going to give for it? And, you know, the intention has to be different.
Right.
The intention has to be there.
And then the other scrutiny to that is because of what that million has given you, that's just the cover for the fear, the anger, the inadequacy of whatever. So that upon looking at why that goal is limited, maybe extract and heal and let go of all of those other stories and then live into, like you said, I think even on that path of saying that, you have to also let go of those things. Because those, if those are limited, they inherently have all of those tentacles that are connected to the limits of this world.
Yeah. Darren, how old are you, if you don't mind my asking?
53.
You have more muscle mass than like many 30-year-olds out there. What's the secret here?
Oh, they've probably neutered themselves with a lot of poor choices of how they're eating and the exposures, and probably not moving their body enough. And listen, you know, I eat plants. I eat whole food. I eat clean food.
Do you eat meat?
No.
You don't eat meat?
No.
Really?
Not at all. No way. I don't need death to be to be alive.
You're a vegetarian.
Vegan for
You're vegan.
17 years. Yeah.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. Wow. I tried vegetarianism for 3 years, but it didn't work for me. I messed up my health.
It's just it's there's too much nuance. It's too categorically flippant. Keep in mind, I've spent my entire life looking at nutrient density. Meat is a bioaccumulator of what was once a plant. And that is also a flippant statement. I realize that. However, all nutrients come from this earth and come from plants. So why would I need a middleman to get my nutrients? I don't.
I am not qualified to enter a debate with you on that.
Yeah.
Nor do I want to. I'm just curious how you know, how you live and what your diet is, because you're obviously very healthy. But I would be curious to have at some point, if you would be down, you on my podcast, and then somebody who's like doing full carnivore. And if you'd be down to just have not yell at each other. I'll find someone who would be willing to have the debate and just the conversation.
Yeah, I
it
mean,
would be interesting.
I mean, it would be interesting, and at the same time, I also just back away from the need.
Right.
I
mean, if it works for you, there's no.
But I'm saying like going back to even whether it's this, I'm not interested in I've had many opportunities to debate people. I'm not interested in spending my time trying to talk to someone who doesn't want to change their point of view.
Or isn't curious about it.
Not curious about it.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
for me, is it physical? Yes. Is it chemical? Yes. Is it spiritual? Yes. Is it moral? Yes. It's way more than just this. What's the latest science? And by the way, we've got the science on our side too. So, there's infinitely more longevity studies on mostly plants.
I've heard about that. Longevity in particular. I've heard about that. Like protein-based or animal, I should say, based diets seem to be a lot better for like short-term success when it comes to physique and especially in training. But I have heard that about plant-based. Anyways, again, I'm not like qualified to go there. I know that there's also a lot of research saying that like veganism is actually quite harmful for the environment. And then, it's always this like the carnivores say veganism is bad. The vegan, it's always like that.
I mean, if we start, this will open up a 2-hour conversation.
Yeah.
But
we can pull up, an article on both sides.
You want to find it, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
Like, again, I go back to, I've been in rooms, I've talked to, done lectures in front of carnivore, and one of the first things I'll say is, I'm plant-based and you don't have to be, because I'm not interested in like.
That's a very reasonable point of view, yeah.
And there isn't a nutrient I haven't found that I don't get in other ways, right? Even my B12, I get in, whole raw spirulina, so I don't even need to supplement B12. And these.
You don't supplement B12? Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I was getting B12 injections when I was on the
vegetarian diet. I mean, you don't need that much, but
right.
But at the end of the day, it's a microbial thing, and it's also a soil thing. So you can also get it by way of if you have clean soil, and I do have a garden, and taking a little bit of dirt in, you can extricate the B12 from your own interaction between the microbes and your
like
microbiome.
Eating a little bit of earth?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's the whole concept. This is interesting that you say that, because like back where I come from, there's this whole idea of like letting your children play in the dirt.
Of course.
Right? So.
It's one of the best things you can do for their microbiome.
But doesn't it taste bad? Do you mix
I'm not
it in a
looking
smoothie?
for example, you're not looking to eat dirt, like a spoonful of dirt, even though it wouldn't be that bad. But like unperfectly washed, if they're from my garden.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to go out and
I wash my vegetables.
Yeah.
But if they're from I literally pull a carrot, blow it off and eat it.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And the lettuce and the kale or whatever, and the celery is blowing up right now. Like I just rip it off and eat it. I don't wash that.
I guess maybe you're also part of it is what you're eating, like where you're getting your vegetables, where you're getting your protein.
All these things, when you have these flippant kind of one-off, this is that, blah, 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 blah. There's so much nuance in all of this stuff. When are you eating? How are you eating? What is you and I.
How much vitamin D you're getting probably
too.
Yeah.
If you and I, so you eat meat and a few other things, right?
Yeah, I eat meat. I eat a lot of meat, yeah.
I'm sorry. But if we had a plate, let's just call it a veggie plate. Mm-hmm. All vegetables, or fruit. Studies show that my microbiome is adapted so good at the extraction. It isn't the food that you're eating that you are uptaking. It's your microbiome breaking down through the digestive process, and then the metabolites it is uptaking of the food that you just consumed. So we could be eating exactly the same, and I am extracting more nutrients out of the same exact meal than you are, right?
Yeah.
So therein lies a whole world of difference.
Yeah.
You could have, but we also know that the microbiome changes really quick. If I'm going from a standard American westernized crazy ass diet that's full of ultra processed food, within days and weeks, that microbiome has changed if we're now eating plants and fruit and whole foods. Like, it changes pretty quickly. And then over time, it even optimizes even more. So our ecosystem adapts to what we're putting into it. So then now expand out. We're talking about all this macro stuff when we freaking barely understand the microbiological system. And then the quality, and then the where, and then is there pesticides, or herbicides, and chemicals, and blah, 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 blah. There's an impossible amount of information. So I just go whole food. I don't need to kill anything. I thrive. I have muscle. I'm strong. I'm happy. I have energy. My choice, my life.
Right. Yeah, of course. If it works for
you. Again, you go down the world of just this insane amount of billions and billions and billions and billions of animals being killed every freaking day that are in horrible situations, and people are like, I don't want to give up my cheese or my milk. And okay, why don't you go pull a calf away from the mom and see how you feel about that? Because that's what they have to do. They have to inseminate the calf, the cow. They have to pull the calf away from the mom, separate them, so crying and by the way, that
But
insemination.
wouldn't there be no cows,
Huh?
technically, if we didn't eat meat? Because they wouldn't be out in the wild, would they? Cows in particular.
Not the cows that we've bred for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let it go back to nature. This is a very destructive pattern that we're in. We're breeding unhealthy cows in a horrible, torturous situation just so we can have a fucking steak. To make the argument that we need steak to survive, which is not true. So what people don't want to see, which is why I also wrote Fatal Conveniences, is people don't want to see what's going on. Like, okay, I want to live with I'm here, I'm experiencing the Darren that is here and the soul that gets to interact. I just want to be aware so I don't become a victim of all these other choices, right? Of all these other things, because people made choices that are now affecting me. And so it's not right the way we're killing and raising, and it's fucking horrible.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I just had somebody on. She's a naturopathic doctor, and she did animal-based diet for a year, and it basically cured her of all her health issues almost
she did
instantly.
What?
Animal-based diet, yeah.
Okay.
Carnivore, basically carnivore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck long term.
She went off of it.
Yeah.
But for a year it worked.
Well, it's called an elimination diet.
Isn't veganism the same though?
Depends on what you mean. I mean, like, if I eat watermelon for a month, I'm gonna get a great result. I'm gonna feel great. Like, it's gonna have an amazing healing response on me. So elimination and not having the body onslaught with all of these different food combinations, which also we haven't evolved to. Usually food selection is from the olfactory. It's from the nose. But we've manipulated the senses. So if you've taken a whole food and changed it, now we can't use the nose anymore because it's manipulated. But in food selection, all mammals know when to eat a certain food and what food to consume at any given time based on the nose. But we're the only mammal that has just blown that off completely. So we're just eating whatever the hell we want.
Do you think it might not work for everybody, a vegan diet or vegetarian diet? Like, do you think it is individual based? You don't know. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know, but I would love to find out. If people ate closer to the way I approach eating whole food and others that I know, I think we have a really strong argument that it could help a lot of people. And we have growing evidence to support that. Even the greatest studied, diet on the planet is Mediterranean diet with very little fish and very small percentages, lower than 15% of your overall calories from meat, dairy, fish, eggs, all of that stuff. I think it's even lower than that. So, we have a lot of data, but again, it's almost impossible to study because things are so out of their. It's like trying to understand stress in a certain way. We're all stressed all the time, and you're stressed with the chemicals and the polyester. Like, it's trying to understand a fishbowl inside of a fishbowl. But I would love to find out one day.
Yeah. Have you heard of I don't know if it's research backed up, but the narrative that a lot of the food today that we get from the stores causes hormonal disruptions. So
Yeah.
one of the theories is that the lack of testosterone in men, specifically in this part of the world, has a lot to do with the food.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. The ultra processed food. I think it's also affected by 1,000 cuts. It's not just the food. I mean, we have chemicalized food, pesticides, herbicides, larvicides, PFAS, plastics, all of these things that are also endocrine disruptors. To your point.
Yeah, there was that study. I can't quote it now, but they found like microplastics and like an obscene amount of women that they tested, like in their gut or something.
It's everywhere. So they found it in the heart. They found it in the testes. Anywhere you look, it's going to be there, right? And that, again,
it's a very unsettling thing to think about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, again, that's climate change. You change your climate.
Right.
Right? By what you're doing. And then by the underwear that you use, the deodorant you use, the shampoo you use, the makeup you use, the fragrance you use, all of that stuff. Endocrine disruptor, endocrine disruptor, endocrine disruptor, endocrine disruptor, endocrine disruptor, carcinogenic, endocrine disruptor, all of that stuff. And then reapply, reuse, reapply, all of that stuff. And then what we're eating. And then the pollution in the air. And then the list just goes on and on. So where's the smoking gun? It's all of these choices added up over time. So our fertility rates are plummeting. Like you said, the 30-year-olds are...
Men are splitting bills with women. I had to throw that in there.
Men are what?
Men are splitting bills with women on dates.
Ugh.
That's one of the reasons. That's gotta be.
That's ridiculous. I've never split a bill on a date ever and never will. It's ridiculous. Yeah, so like we need testosterone so men stop doing that stupid shit.
Resuscitate chivalry.
Exactly. I love it. Hashtag.
Yeah. It's interesting though. Yeah. It's kind of evident, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at the fabric of, that's the fabric of literally the only reason biologically we're here is to move the race forward. And the things that we're doing are having that effect. Like in the next 30 years, we won't have sperm that work.
Yeah.
And the guys that do, or it's going to be that Mad Max show of like his work, and then
it's funny to us now, but
it's happening.
It actually would
we're
be a
right
really
in the
scary
middle of the movie.
situation. Yeah.
We're right in the middle of the movie. And so like, and I also have this thing of, men have started, testosterone replacement therapy, TRT, in their 30s. And like, I know men, and it's like going, wait a minute, you haven't even taken care of your foundation.
Right.
And by the way, I was involved in a study that had elimination of meat, by the way, and there's also other studies to back it up that I was not involved in, that by elimination of meat within 30 days, men's testosterone went up by how much? 30% in 3 weeks. Actually, not 30 days, 3 weeks. By eating plants.
I heard the opposite.
It's not true.
I heard
It
the
is not
opposite.
true. Over time, look at these guys' numbers. Every one of them, every one of these dudes, their numbers are whacked right now. And they're having to add in fruits and add in, but they have banked on this narrative, so they can't fully come out. I know guys that know them. They're just making shit up. Again, you want to go with no science, no long-term data, and a bunch of whack jobs making money off all of that stuff.
But
That's my particular current point of view.
opinion.
Anyway,
No,
I also don't care because I'm.
No, I respect that. That's so. I'm not. I'm not.
Again, if it lines up, integration.
I don't. I won't hold the fact that you don't eat steak against you. Maybe a little bit. Just kidding. I won't.
Cool. I'll eat my spirulina and my lovely life-giving plants next to you, and be happy about it, and not judge you for it.
Yeah.
That's on you. That's on you.
I'll eat your share of steak.
Okay.
There you go.
That's on you. So,
Balance.
like, again, I look at as I've continued to mature and look at this stuff, one of my greatest things of eating plants is, yes, I thrive from a health perspective, but in fact, the greatest thing is I'm not killing something. I'm not killing an animal to eat it. In fact, I have this group of squirrels on my property, and I get to take my watermelon after I've eaten it, throw it out, and I get to see them thrive.
I heard that a lot of guys who they're into hunting, they'll hunt in a very particular way, because you know how it works with, like, for example, certain animals that will dominate and will need to be basically like I don't know what it's like, the main male or whatever in the family of the
Alpha,
animals.
yeah.
The alpha male. So by hunting that animal,
It's just ridiculous.
they will.
It's a ridiculous thing because
That's the more humane approach to.
listen, if
eating
you're
meat.
gonna eat meat, yeah, go kill it yourself and take responsibility for everything. If you're gonna do that,
It's better than going to a store and
I
buying.
admire you people for that, and Joe Rogan, all those guys. Fine, do it, and at least understand life and death and make that very sacred. I respect,
and it is for them.
I respect that.
Yeah.
I absolutely. I've known a lot of Native Americans in my life. I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, again, I'm lined up with me. I do not need to kill an animal to thrive. Me, I don't need to do that. I thrive just fine on the amazing plant life that I get to eat. That's it. Other than that, I don't give a shit. Like, if people want to take anything I'm saying and apply it, great. Here's my statement. Eat more freaking plants. It will help you tremendously. Period.
You need to unscrew this and drop it now, the mic.
That's right. That's right.
You know what? I think a lot of my audience will appreciate your perspective as well, because when I took them through the journey of getting off the vegetarian diet, a lot of them were kind of like looking for an explanation. And I'm like, I can just give you the explanation of how I feel and what my body was going through. I don't have anything else for you. So I think they'll appreciate the alternative perspective, especially for those who don't want to get off vegetarian diets and vegan diets. You know, it's whatever works for you.
I mean, the numbers, you gotta find a good functional doctor. You gotta find what's going on. I don't know past. I don't know history. I don't know genetics. I don't know epigenetics. I don't know your microbiome. I don't know your emotional state. I don't know. Like, there's a...
It's a lot more complicated than I think
Of course
a
it
lot
is.
of these extreme views make it to be, you know?
Of course.
Yeah.
If you are in judgment and fear and stress, eating anything, you're not going to digest. How about that? How about that? Just take that in for a second. Everyone listening. If you are in fear, chronic too, and anger and shame and sadness and worry and all of that stuff, no matter what you're eating, you are not going to digest because your body's in fight and flight.
I just recently learned that some foods can cause anxiety. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, meat, death.
Stop. Stop. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. But we are actually at our time with all of that. Darren, this was an absolute pleasure. Even though you don't eat steak, this was an absolute pleasure.